Shalom and welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast. And today we're going to discuss what will happen with the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Is this plan to relocate them from Gaza to other Arab countries in the Middle East a real thing, or is it just, to get the conversation going, Mati?
This summer movie is called Gaza: The Aftermath.
Yeah, we don't know what's happening there.
Yeah. So today on the TBN Israel podcast, we have something entirely different, and it seems like every week is completely new in the ideas that are floated. I feel like something this outlandish and this outside of the box hasn't happened in a really long time.
I like it because, it breaks this status quo, the situation that we have to negotiate with Hamas, with terrorists, in order to have any kind of, a peaceful solution to this conflict. But this is thinking out of the box completely.
So let's present this idea.
Okay.
It's been something, I think it's interesting even for us, as Israelis. We didn't dare to dream this big when it comes to what we're going to do with the day after with Gaza.
No, definitely.
The biggest question on the table for months now has been, how do we move on with the situation in the Gaza Strip and not have Hamas return to the same place they were before October 7th, 2023?
Yeah, basically what's the day after this ceasefire agreement, maybe if we reach the third phase of it.
Exactly.
Which is not
how the
negotiated
ceasefire
yet.
is going, by the way.
We'll talk about it in a second, but I think it's first good to say hi to all the guests that we have here from Ma'ale Adomim, Mati's hometown. Can you say hi to everybody? We have a group of high schoolers all the way from Ma'ale Adomim, which is a city east of us, this way, towards Jordan. And Mati grew up there.
That's one way to describe it.
So hopefully, the education advanced since the time that you went there.
It could only go up since then, hopefully.
Okay, definitely. And another thing for Tomer, please guys subscribe, share, click the subscribe button, this little bell. Everybody here promised me that they already did that, so I'm hoping we get at least 32 more subscribers just now. And okay, let's explain what this deal is all about.
So let's explain the backdrop of the problem here.
Yeah.
The big problem is twofold. One, we're after 15 months of war in the Gaza Strip, or a little less than that. If you 15 months into the attack, and let's say 13, 14 months since
the maneuver,
since the maneuver started in the Gaza Strip. And since that time, several things have happened. Hamas has been weakened dramatically, and yet they remain in control.
Yeah.
The people of Gaza have moved back and forth, north, south, east, west, within the Gaza
Anyway,
Strip.
they've been moving, and there's not much houses left that are habitable. There's no running water, there's no electricity.
There's debate over the exact numbers, but let's say about half, give or take, of the livable space in the Gaza Strip has been ruined. The reason for this, again, to frame this conversation, also for those viewing from The Hague, has to do with the fact that the IDF found weaponry and essentially terrorist nests within almost every home throughout the Gaza Strip and many of the, let's call it the suburb cities of
and
the
definitely almost every school, every United Nations facility, or many of them, and many of the hospitals as well, are being used by Hamas as terror hubs.
So many of the structures have been ruined. There were also IEDs, or the threat of IEDs throughout the city, so the IDF had to carry out extensive engineering operations with bulldozers and clearing out roads, etc. Anyway, the end of the story is...
The place is not livable, basically.
Much of the Gaza Strip right now is in shambles. And by the way, this has happened also before, because when a terrorist organization embeds itself within a civilian population, and they build tunnels under children's bedrooms, and they load explosives into the walls of houses, and they stash rockets in the hospital buildings, then by nature of warfare, many of those structures will be ruined, and that's what happened.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen that also with the Islamic State in Iraq, in the areas of Mosul and other big cities that were controlled by the Islamic State. Thank you, Mati.
You're welcome.
And
then Trump just said that it's...
Yeah, we can start saying this agreement. Okay, then Trump landed a huge announcement after his meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the United States will take over Gaza, basically, and then relocate all the 1.8 or 2 million Palestinians, depending how you count and how many times you count each Palestinian, to a different country in this region.
I think this is where the story gets really it gets fascinating in the sense that when you're inside like the mud of it or the thick of it, it's almost impossible to think outside of the box. So like in Israel, in our government, internally, whatever, all this discussion that's taking place is always about the following thing. Are we going to move 1 centimeter this way or 1 centimeter that way. And then comes along President Trump and his administration.
Let's move all the way there. Yeah, I don't want to talk anymore.
They've said we're not even negotiating whether or not Hamas, how many terrorists we're going to release. We're negotiating the fact of whether you will exist next week or not.
Yeah. Let's start with this. Hamas will die. Now we can talk.
Well, he didn't say the words die. He said we're removing the population from the Gaza Strip.
Hamas will no longer control the Gaza Strip.
And the big issue has been, how do you rehabilitate the Gaza Strip and the people of the Gaza Strip and not allow Hamas to go back to where they were a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to do something drastic. Is to bring in an international observer force, to bring in a foreign army.
And they said, okay, we don't trust these international coalitions. We don't trust the EU. We don't trust basically, this is the sidelines. We ourselves, the United States, will make sure that the Gaza Strip becomes something that can make money, becomes something that people can live in.
Yes.
And in order to do that, we have to find a different place for the population for the meantime. Meantime doesn't state when that meantime ends, but it takes time to rebuild an entire strip of land.
So let's zoom out. Here's what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the new, the bold, the beautiful,
the best,
the best plan to rehabilitate the state of Gaza, and by extension, our good friends President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, how they're trying to reshape the world that we live in, specifically Israel, the Gaza Strip, and the immediate neighborhood in the Middle East. And all the best and the well-known players are in this game.
Saudi Arabia,
the Saudis, the Kuwaitis,
Jordanians,
the US, the Jordanians,
Egyptians.
Everyone is in this play, and it is crazy.
Yeah.
It is.
You have also the right-wing political parties within Israel that are shocked and happy because that's what they've been calling for many, many years. And everybody, stated that they're crazy, that they're extremists, that this has no merit, that the international community in the U.S. will never go with this. And then it comes from the United States president.
Yeah. So let's go back a couple days. President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu meet. Prime Minister Netanyahu is the first international leader to meet with Donald Trump after his after his second term starts in the White House. They meet together. There's several days of preparatory talks that happen beforehand between Israeli teams and American teams, and then Prime Minister Netanyahu himself.
Preparatory, I like this word.
They spend word of the day. Spends a whole day in pre-meetings where, from what we can tell, much of the ideas are completely new to the Israeli team.
Yeah.
And I'd say, on the contrary, the American teams comes well-baked with their ideas, and we'll talk about this later on.
Oh, that's nice. They came with a wider plan, not just, a solution for Gaza, a solution for Gaza that involves incentives to other Arab countries to create a coalition with Israel in the wider Middle East, to revive the Abraham Accords, to have agreements, economic agreements between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and that's already been announced that it will happen by Netanyahu and by Trump.
Yeah.
Saudis, not so much yet. We'll see what they say about that.
So they come out with this bold plan, and the scene is hilarious. If you haven't seen this, Google Trump Netanyahu press conference.
Netanyahu is giggling and is so happy.
Trump has his usual power stance. He's sitting there very upright. He has this whole idea. And Netanyahu is sitting next to him like a kid who's been given a new Nintendo for his birthday.
Yeah.
Not to belittle Netanyahu, he is elated. He's sitting there.
Elated?
Very happy.
Okay, good, thank you.
Second word of the day.
I'm doing it on behalf of the kids here, not for me personally.
So he sits there. He's trying to hold back the smile on his face, and he can't.
Wow,
it's like he got the birthday
blushed. He was totally blushed.
Rosy cheeks. He can't believe what he heard. And
he felt like a child on Christmas. It was amazing.
And Trump just continues on and on and on with this plan. And the plan is, and here's where it gets crazy. He says the following ideas. He says, we're removing the majority of the Gazans from the Gaza Strip. And he says it as if it's as if it's moving pieces on a board. It's 1.7 million. It's 1.8 million. We're not sure. But most of them will have to leave.
Yeah, because it's impossible to rebuild once they're there. But actually, Mati, it makes sense. And Israel in this war proved that it is possible. We already moved the population of the Gaza Strip, in pieces from area to area when we carried out offensives against Hamas locations. We notified the population that Hamas is conducting attacks against Israel from that neighborhood. That's why you need to move.
But
you move through this area.
Here we're talking about something longer term.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think we need to like let's give people like the big pieces of what this agreement or this idea is. So the first one is everyone that's here is being pulled out of the Gaza Strip and going to go elsewhere. We'll touch the elsewhere.
Elsewhere, yeah. Elsewhere is very interesting.
We'll touch the question of what do you do with like close to 2 million people when you move them between countries. And the second part of it is he says we're going to rebuild the Gaza Strip, and we is the U.S.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was unexpected.
That was shocking, yeah, basically. So there's this picture that I keep getting of, the two-state solution. Then you see United States in Gaza and Israel next to it.
Yeah.
You know?
So Trump says this very surprising idea that has not been communicated in the past, and the idea is the U.S. is taking over the Gaza Strip, and he says we're going to rebuild it, we're going to control, we're going to secure the area, we're going to be the ones helping to move these people to a better life, and we're going to bring them back sometime in the future. And he says this.
It didn't say that they're bringing them back necessarily.
He says maybe they'll come back, but it's going to be a long restoration, maybe 10, maybe 15 years. Again.
Which is a way that it can work, because the core issue with the Hamas and the Palestinian terrorists against Israel is the educational part. And you need at least 20 years to re-educate the population in order for them to have other thoughts against Israel other than, let's destroy all of them and take all over this country. I think
it's a question of indoctrination.
Yeah.
Like they're a nation that has repeatedly, even after the ceasefire, is convinced that the only path forward is a path of violence and destruction. And that needs to be broken. So Trump does this crazy thing. He puts a loaded gun on the table, metaphorically speaking, of course, and he says, look, we're going to remove these people. Hamas is gone. They're not even part of the conversation anymore at this point. And he says, and we're going to rebuild the Gaza Strip. Not only that, the U.S. is going to do this. We're going to be on the ground. Yeah. Not only that, we're not paying for this.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key.
So who's paying?
Who's paying? Not us.
We're not paying. Other countries will pay.
Which other countries will pay for that?
Yeah, other countries, they will.
They will.
Other countries will pay.
And when you say rich other countries, we all know who is meaning immediately.
Saudi Arabia.
No, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, all the oil,
all the rich countries.
Oil princes. Yes.
So something really interesting has happened here. The Trump administration, which in the previous term seemed like it was sort of like, it was figuring out things in motion, comes with a whole written out plan.
Huge plan for everything.
The plan really, and you have to hand it to them, they looked at all the moving parts in the Middle East and said, well, how do we resolve in one fell swoop? How do we resolve the Iranians? How do we resolve the Gazans or Hamas in Gaza? How do we resolve Hezbollah not rebuilding itself in Lebanon? How do we stabilize Syria? How do we bring in phase 3 of Abraham Accords? And they wrote out the plan, and it's complex. Don't get me wrong. And they said, well, we're going to do this. We're going to reposition here. We're going to bring these people in. And when we're done and the dust settles, this is going to be a world that's unrecognizable in a positive way.
Yeah, talking about Gaza, they plan to have hotels, golf courses there. He called that the Riviera of the Middle East. That's something I want to see. I mean, look at it now. All this cement and ruins.
Like the question is, where are you going to send them?
So Trump 2 weeks ago, right? Let's say 2 weeks ago, give or take, he starts floating this idea in several press conferences of we're going to move them, and Jordan and Egypt are going to take them. Jordan and Egypt immediately
said, no way.
Absolutely not. We're not
taking one of them.
And let's not only that, even some of the Hamas terrorists that have been released in the hostage exchange deal, they don't have anywhere to go. They're temporarily in Egypt, part of them. There was discussion previously if they will go to Turkey, they'll go to other countries. These countries don't want them. Let's be honest.
Who would want the terrorists, murderers with blood on their hands?
We don't. And why would Turkey want to take in hardened terrorists? Why would any other country want to take in hardened terrorists? So there's a problem with this question. It's not a simple equation to solve it all.
Yeah, but he has leverage. He has leverage on Egypt. He has leverage on Jordan. These economies are highly dependent on the United States, especially the regimes. Sisi is dependent on military aid support.
It's not only
Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom, are depending on him.
But even before we get into their interest, let's reshuffle the conversation altogether. People say these axioms, these statements with an exclamation mark in the beginning. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict cannot be resolved. These people cannot be moved. It's like absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
These things have happened in world warfare history
all the
countless times, and happen as we're speaking countless times. It's just when they zoom into Israel and the Palestinians around us that suddenly all the solutions that work elsewhere aren't on the table.
Yeah, listen, in general, refugees, the determination of refugees by the United Nations are people that need to be moved to a different country And that's it. Only in the Palestinians, you have
camp.
only in the Palestinians, you have this issue of right of return to this so-called land of Israel. It doesn't exist with other refugees.
The Palestinians are the only people in the world, by the way, this is by law, where refugee status is passed from father to son to
Yeah, you
grandson,
can't be a second-generation refugee.
The idea is that refugees, you're only a refugee once. You can't.
One lifetime, that's it. Yeah.
It doesn't become a profession, except if you're Palestinian. And the UN, by the way, set up its charter and set up UN organizations. UNRWA is one of them, UNHCR is another one of them. They've set up organizations that are meant to perpetuate Palestinian victimhood and refugee status. This is a side topic for a different podcast.
Yeah.
But all this to say that there are solutions. Let me just throw out some numbers here. Post-World War II, easily, we're not sure about what the exact numbers are, in Europe, post-World War II, over 35 million people move after the war.
Mm-hmm.
You have entire populations group from the Sudet chain that's between what was the Czech Republic and Germany, and Polish people that come back to their homes, and Germans that leave other countries.
So many refugees. Many. A lot more than the Palestinians.
Tens of millions of refugees. And then in the aftermath of the British Empire collapsing after World War II, there's countless refugees. Think about Pakistan and India. They exchange millions of people willingly, knowing that they will always have war, which they do, by the way, unless they move their population. And you see this around the world, where just mass immigrations of people. Out of all of those tens of millions of people that have moved, only one population group is still a refugee today: the Palestinians in Israel.
Yeah.
They're the only ones. There's nowhere else.
Well, and also there are Palestinians that are still in refugee status in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in other countries surrounding Israel.
Only to be hovering over Israel's head.
Exactly.
Anyway, so all that to say is there are solutions to these things. They've been practiced widely around the world, even as we speak today, as we're...
There is already 3 options on the table.
Yeah. So thank you, Tomo, for adding this into our script.
Good options.
Look, so let's think about the incentives of the people. The Jordanians and the Egyptians, it's not that they're saying, we don't want this because America or the U.S. made this idea. They're saying this because we don't want the fiscal, the financial responsibility of taking in more refugees. Why do we need this? Jordan already had an influx of close to 3 million refugees with the collapse of Iraq and Syria during the civil war. They're up to their neck with financial problems because of it. The Egyptians...
King is barely holding.
What?
Who is?
On Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan is
King is...
By the way, listen, guys,
Jordan is already support.
Jordan is already the Palestinian state. What, 60% of the populations are Palestinians?
Yeah, you're going wild here.
If you're talking about, the majority of the people that live there.
Yes, the majority are.
That's what it is.
But the rulership, which is
Hashemite, yes.
Yeah, which is synonymous with a lot of the problems that the British and the French created in the Middle East. They find a minority group that will rule a majority that's different than them, knowing that it'll always keep them fighting against each other.
Well, that's why they want to keep the Palestinian issue and the right of return alive, because they want one day Palestinians to go back to Israel.
They're also anti-Semitic. Let's not flatter.
And what's Somaliland? Is like Somalia?
Okay.
Yeah. And what's
Somaliland?
Puntland?
Okay, so those two countries are Shias in Africa, and they want to get.
They want to get more Palestinians.
They're
willing to get Palestinians because they want to get freedom, and they need the U.S. to support them.
Okay, so here's what Trump says. Trump says.
Morocco is in deep shit.
They say to him, you see the thing the journalist says to him, well, Jordan and Egypt have said they're not interested in taking any more refugees. They were strongly against it. And he said, they'll help. We've done a lot for them.
Yeah.
Let's frame this. The U.S. as an economy is not by far. It is the biggest economy in the world, even when you include entire continents together.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a superpower in trade. It's a superpower in geopolitical influence. Mm-hmm. And when they say we will aid a country, that can be a life-changing event for that country. Mm-hmm. And so let's say it this way. If Egypt says, look, we have 100 million problems of poor population and young unemployed population, we don't want any more. And the U.S. says to them, look, we have a regional treaty that's going to be implemented. This regional treaty, it doubles your revenue from the Suez Canal. We remove the State Department warning of the travel ban to Egypt for tourists. We do these incentive packages. The World Bank will give you $50 billion in loans with low interest. It saves their economy for a decade.
Yeah, definitely. It reboosts the economy. You can build a whole factory.
That's easy. That's easy for them to do. There's a lot more than they can do than that. So there's a lot that's on the table as far as the incentive package for people.
Let's look at it from the Palestinian, the Palestinian civilian or family side. They are going back now to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. And they come and they see ruins. They see dirt. They see houses collapse.
Rubble.
They have nowhere. They have no water. They have almost no food, and
especially concrete.
Yeah, lots of concrete, and that's it. That's what they have. So, if I would have been offered to live in this situation for an extra 20 years under the rule of a terrorist regime, or to move to a different country and have a normal future, I mean, it's an easy choice.
I'll tell you what, it's more complicated than that. Because, I visited Berlin like 2 weekends ago, and Berlin was devastated in World War II, as were many German cities. They had it coming. I'm not saying they didn't, but let's say it was devastated. Today, you won't be able to find the destruction signs in those cities.
That was like, what, 50, 60 years ago?
70-something years ago, but that's not the point. The point is when you have a society that's able to rebuild and take money and use it for the right thing, then you can rebuild.
But we don't have that society.
Exactly. Yeah. We have a problem with the Palestinian people and specifically their leadership, the Palestinian Authority and the Hamas, where their only MO when it comes to foreign aid is stealing the money and using it for terrorism and for corruption.
No, it's definitely. By the way, what's MO, the acronyms of it?
Modus operandi.
Modus operandi.
It's the way they operate.
Cool.
So the only way they operate is, look, the Gazans, and you hear this, like they've received enormous amounts of foreign aid, enough to turn Gaza into Singapore of the Middle East.
Yeah,
really,
definitely.
I'm not exaggerating. They could be a completely different society. They took that money and they built underground tunnels, and they built terrorist infrastructure, and they pulled out the water pipes from the ground and filled them with explosives and launched them at Israel.
Yeah.
And they paid terrorists, and they paid the families of suicide bombers, and they've done
so. They still pay.
They've done so.
Also, the Palestinian Authority pays, by the way.
Also, the Palestinian Authority does, with foreign aid that's received from European governments. So, if all you do with the money is create more death and destruction, how could we ever expect you to rebuild the Gaza Strip?
Yeah.
And the answer is you can't.
Definitely.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
And that goes back to this fundamental conversation where we've talked about this since the beginning of the war. If I know that the other side is only going to do the same thing again and again, I know that they are.
Yeah. Why give them more money? Or why do the same thing? That's.
Why repeat our insanity? Why do that again and again?
Definitely.
Why not just do something different?
Yeah. Let's see.
So that's what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. Something different.
Yeah. Something entirely different. That's going to remove Hamas government and control from the Gaza Strip. It'll detach them from their source of power, which is the chokehold that they have on the economy and the people. Mm-hmm. And those people, when they see a different life opportunity and a different life, will be able to do something better for them. We always go back to this thought of it all starts and ends with leadership. You have to have a vision of something that's positive and not just more of the same.
And something that is, bigger and wider than what you have in front of you. And we see that the responses of the Palestinian Authority, which are the legitimate leaders of the Palestinians in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, is automatically to reject this deal. And also, of course, of Hamas, automatically rejecting this deal. So, as you said, the leadership are afraid of this change because it will undermine their ability to keep taking money from their civilians, to stop using them as human shields, to stop using them as instruments for getting this billions of dollars every, year, month, a lot of money that is used for them personally to go and live in luxurious hotels in Qatar, Turkey, or other places around the world.
Exactly.
So,
and that's what really needs to be changed. And I think the world is awake finally to the understanding that you just can't continue with business as usual. We can't just say, oh, well, this is the government of the Gaza people, let's continue. We know where it's going to go. And they're looking at the Palestinian Authority with their extremely elderly leader, Abu Mazen, who's 87, 88, I forget how old he is. He's had health issues for a decade at this point. There is no succession.
Treating in Israel, by the way, getting treated in Israeli hospitals.
But again, there's no succession plan in place. They internally are unable to govern their own people. They steal most of the money that's given to them for the wrong causes. They need leadership of virtue and not villainous leaders. They have to have that. And this plan, which says, look, guys, we've seen what you're able to do. We've seen the nature of your leadership. I think we're done with that.
Yeah.
Be gone. We're done. Out. And we'll discuss in about a decade what the succession plan for your leadership is.
Yeah, how much time is it said? 10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years.
But you don't even know, definitely.
But I'd say this, because we'll get to this later on, is like what's really going to happen. This is, I think, the brilliance of Trump as a negotiator. And again, you can say many things of the character of the man. He does things that are bizarre in the behavior pattern. But he looks, and they say, look, we're debating whether it's 100 or 110,000. He says, oh, I thought I was just going to take it for free. And then like it flips the whole conversation. The Gazans and Israel Hamas were negotiating over like the minutia. Is it this or that? And he says, we're not even having this discussion. Yeah. You're not a party to this conversation. We're going to debate whether you live or die, but you're definitely not. You're definitely not continuing to lead these people. And he completely changes it.
And he can do it. He has the power to do it.
Not only that, you look at the track record. Let's say I was Hamas, and I looked at it and said,
Sinwar Shoshani.
And I said, yeah, and I said he's bluffing. And then some guy says, no, hold on. Look what he's doing to his next door neighbors. He sent his Secretary of State to Central and Latin America.
Yeah, true.
He starts making threats to the Canadians of canceling their country and putting tariffs on their trade.
Yeah.
He starts making threats of cutting funding to the UN and exiting treaties with the European Union.
Taking the Panama Canal.
Yeah, of the European Union. Yeah. And you look at it at first glance, it looks like insanity. And at a second glance, there's a what is the term? There's a technical term in negotiations. I was just talking about this the other day. Anyway, it's where you like set the price. Like if I'm the first to say, hey, let's talk about like the price of this car.
You throw in like a huge
I'd say like
$7 million.
It's going to be a fair price, but nothing less than 60. You were planning to pay 22.
Yeah, it's like
wait. And so
now how can I ask 22 because it's too low?
So I'm framing the negotiation from a position that's advantageous for me. Mm-hmm. And that's what he does. He goes to the countries around him. Look what he's done with like Latin America and Central America. These countries that weeks ago were just like allowing like illegal immigrants.
10,000 soldiers now on the border on the Mexico side defending against illegal immigration into the United States.
Yeah, but it's people stopping their own population from leaving.
Making people taking responsibility for their own population.
And he put pressure on the Canadians when it comes to trade and tariffs, and suddenly they're like, wait a minute, I guess we're negotiating about what you've been talking about. He's put pressure on UNRWA to the point where they're now like they have like similar to people that are trying to raise funds to go to like have an operation on their cat. They're released. Have you seen this last week? You seen it, Tomer? These begging videos where like the spokesperson of UNRWA, it looks like she's coming from like an office at the basement of a bus station. Please, we need money. We can't make payroll next month. We need help. I mean, it's like he's put them in like a very defensive position. And then think about the Hamas is looking at that, and they're saying, I don't know. I don't think this is a negotiation tactic. I think he's legit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like to imagine that Trump advisor came to Gaza lately, and he saw that what's going on the field and came back to the U.S. and told him, listen up, we will need to move them anyhow. So much destruction, bombs still running, there is leftover from the IDF destruction. All of that together mean that anyhow they will need to move from place to place to be in the area.
For a season.
Yeah, so let's talk about Hamas, okay? Because Hamas will not let the population leave willingly. So how is the United States and Israel gonna, move them out of there?
Let me challenge that.
Yeah.
With two thoughts. Before, again, this feels like a lifetime ago, before the war broke out, the trending social media videos that were, especially like on TikTok and Instagram, that were coming out of the Gaza Strip, remember were young Gazans fleeing on speedboats across the Mediterranean into Europe. Do you remember this?
No.
Tomo, do you remember this? You had a bunch of we're talking guys in their early 20s from the richest and the most affluent families in the Gaza Strip. They would pay to get smuggled out through the Rafah crossing. Yeah. They would pay smugglers to take them from Egypt into on a boat somewhere in the Mediterranean, or to Cyprus, or to Greece, and then they'd get on a speedboat that would sort of like crash on the shores of a Greek vacation island, or an Italian area, or something like that. And there were all these videos of like these young Gazans were like filming themselves arriving in the middle of a beach with people on vacation. And they were fleeing the Gaza Strip well before the war started, unrelated to the war. They just wanted a better life. They're saying that aside from the war, about 100,000 Gazans left Gaza and are living in Egypt in the years that
and they're still there. They're not still there. They didn't come back. True.
And then since the ceasefire, now I forget what the number was. It's 200 a day.
Well, yeah, that's the maximum.
It's 50
that's
plus
the maximum that 50 are allowed.
Plus 3 per injured person, right?
And then kids is an addition. The kids that need help.
So there are hundreds of Gazans that are leaving every day from the Gaza Strip, and it's every day with an equation.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And Israel's allowing them, again, there's some kind of like scrutiny over the list of the people, but let's call it low-level Hamas people or Hamas affiliates, and many Gazans can leave if they need quote-unquote medical care, which essentially is we want to leave Gaza.
Yeah,
and
whatever they,
because there's no return policy. It's just to leave. So they are leaving, and they've wanted to
willingly.
Willingly. Yeah. They wanted to leave willingly, and they've done so in the past too.
Yeah.
So again, we say, I don't think 2 million people are going to want to get up and leave.
I don't think Hamas will let 2 million people leave, but like a
you
pressure
can't stop
mechanism.
2 million people from going somewhere. As hard that you will try, even with 10,000 people, we saw the IDF move them already, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, true. And also, the United States can stop the humanitarian aid trucks from entering the Gaza Strip. And basically, then Hamas will lose any kind of control over the population that they have.
I don't know that they have to go that far.
You think that easily before?
I feel like the pressure that the U.S. government can put on the Hamas is severe to the degree that they will capitulate to whatever's said to them. And look, like, think about this logically. Like, if your family, you could be as patriotic and nationalistic as you were as a Hamas operative in the Gaza Strip, but you have no home, and you know that your life is going to look like crap for a foreseeable future, and your kids have no future because of the government that's implied. And someone says, look, we're going to take you, maybe it's not going to be to Sweden, but we're taking you to an okay country, and we're going to give you an absorption package of like X tens of thousands of dollars, and you're going to get free education.
We're going to give you a house, we're going to give you school.
It's going to be in Arabic possibly, so you can speak the same language. Would you leave? Probably.
Makes sense.
Look, you'd say, like, I'm torn, I want to come back. You would leave. Syrian refugees? What was it? A third of their population left the country? Something like that?
Yeah.
Half the population was displaced, and maybe it's less than that.
What was that, 800,000 or something?
No, that's dead.
True.
In Syria. No, it's like 13 million people were displaced within the civil war, and of them, multiple million never came back to Syria. I forget what the number was, but it was millions. Many of them are in Turkey or in Jordan, or throughout Europe at this point. Anyway, back to our point. So it is possible to move people. And people say, well, it's financially impossible. That's not true either.
Yeah, just using the money that is given to the Gaza Strip and to the Hamas and Palestinian Authority as aid, you can use that money to relocate the entire population.
Exactly.
And to rebuild something good for them.
Yeah, then here comes the genius of the U.S. Trump administration long-term planning, where they've looked at, I don't know this is a fact, I'm sort of looking at the pieces of the puzzle. They've looked at the moving pieces. They said, look, Iran, look, Kuwait, look, Saudi, look, UAE, here's what we're going to do in the Middle East. Iranians, you've been calling out our bluff on like whether or not we're going to retaliate. Well, here's our sanction plan. And it essentially means there's going to be a 2-ton gorilla sitting on your head and preventing any kind of trade whatsoever coming in and out of your country. You think that's not bad enough? We're willing to consider a military option tomorrow, not maybe in the future, like previous governments have done. Tomorrow we're willing to come and bomb. Are you willing to?
That's a big thing. But the response so far was, we are strong, we will withstand the United States sanctions. That's the official response from the Ayatollahs. We'll see.
Let's see. Look, they've had to have, and we've done, thankfully, we've met with some experts on the topic. They've had to use some very heavy-handed policies to repress the demonstrations within Iran itself. I mean, the population has been rising against the government repeatedly in ever-increasing cycles. They've had to use an incredible amount of violence to keep them quiet. Incredible. We're talking about public executions that are just on the rise in the country. So I don't know that they could last forever with never-ending sanctions. Internally,
because when the people have nothing to lose, they will revolt.
Yeah, but also like think about like the way they operate, the Iranians in this region, is they bring down the countries and the economies that they influence. They use Hezbollah to destabilize Lebanon, to assassinate politicians, to weaken the economy, so now they're dependent on Hezbollah, at least in regions of the country. Right? But if someone else comes and says, look, we're going to help you stabilize. We have an incentive package. You're getting foreign aid. We're doing a bunch of measures to ease you getting credit internationally so you can rebuild your army, your police, your government institutions. We're going to help you with trade agreements so now you can export things that are not drugs from the country.
Well, that's appealing.
We have a package. We're bringing in French companies and American companies to build industry in the country. Suddenly the prospect of siding with Hezbollah seems...
Who wants to side with these guys?
Who would side with them again?
Exactly.
Same for the Iranian people. if you wiggle in front of their face, even like this Islamic regime, El Julani or whatever his name is today,
Salam or something.
something. The artist previously known as Prince. Anyway, but if you say this, look, we're giving you a prospect of like financial freedom and prosperity, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
And the same goes to the Iraqis who've publicly risen against the Iranian influence, and the same goes for all the countries who are sitting on the fence. First and foremost in them is Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got a lot to gain from this situation, and I think that the United States, is placing itself as a major, not just a player, but the one who's in charge, of putting the board on the table and deciding the rules of the game. So it's really, really interesting to see what will happen. I don't want to go into, Syria and Turkey. That's a different podcast, but it's also very interesting. Tomer, do we have time for maybe questions from the kids?
Maybe before we do that, I think it's time for some speculations.
Speculations?
I'll ask you, Yael.
Yeah.
What do you think Trump's package is? Trump Netanyahu package is this: all of them removed, all of it rebuilt, Hamas gone from the table, new world peace.
Okay.
What do you think is really going to happen?
I think it's going to be kind of in between. I don't think it's going to be all in, but I think that Hamas will suffer severely. The Palestinians will have a different kind of governing power in the Gaza Strip. The removal part, not sure that it's going to be 100%.
Agreed. I have a sense that the U.S. is going back to being the world superpower in the way it was during the jolly good old Marshall days post-World War II.
Yeah.
A superpower that is the kingmaker in governments, that reshapes global trade, and does so this time around without being the one that pays for everything and doesn't necessarily get something in return,
true.
as has been in the case in recent years. So we're going to see heavy influence by them on this region. We're going to see a greater involvement of, let's call it the oil-rich countries and kingdoms around us in being players in this because they want to rise to the top tier of influencers in this area. Not social media influencers, but let's call it...
that goes together these days.
Geopolitical influencers. They don't need social media, believe me. Geopolitical influencers. And I think also that if you look on the human level, this is the first time that the people of Gaza and the Palestinians of the Palestinian Authority and the people in Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Iraq have a chance at life that is better than influenced by the Islamic government of Iran. For the first time in our lifetime, they have a chance at that. And that in itself is worth discussion and is worth taking careful note of.
Yeah.
It gives me hope, it gives me a positive sense of where things can go. And I think also for us in Israel, this brings a sense of stability in the sense that we don't have to be the one standing alone in this.
Exactly.
Because there was this really tenuous relationship with the Biden administration. Now it's like this place where we're having to catch up with the American administration.
Definitely. We're like, oh, they're moving fast. Good. No, I like it. Let's move with them.
So something I've done since a very young age, or since I was allowed to, is try to give back to the society we live in. Mm-hmm. So I had this tradition for many, many years of donating blood. We had like a blood donation, a MADA blood donation van or ambulance just outside of my office when I used to work downtown. And every 3 months, because you're not allowed to donate more frequently than every 3 months, myself and another colleague would go and donate blood. And I'm happy to say that our sponsor today is MADA. And these people, it's a fully voluntary organization, fully reliant on donations, and they've done amazing, amazing work during this war.
Yeah, Magen David Adom.
Magen David Adom, the Israeli Red Cross, but it's actually the Star of David.
Star of David, yeah.
They've been the blood life behind, and this is pun intended fully, the blood life behind IDF operations, the blood life behind saving countless lives on the battlefield in Israel and outside of Israel.
Under fire and on a normal, routine. Yeah. And there are people that are mainly volunteers. We're talking about like 30,000 volunteers, and their operations is all based on donations.
Yes.
So guys, if you want to support Israel and help save lives in Israel, go to www.savelifeisrael.com and you can make your donation to Magen David Adom, and they really, really do a good job. We've been with them in the ambulances as they received calls to save lives in Haifa and other areas of this country. And now questions. Guys, do you have some questions?
Alan Yonatan.
Alan.
Let's switch back to English, Yonatan.
Yes.
Sure.
Show me.
It's on.
It's on.
The first question I have is concerning the media. One of the major factors in this war was how much it was exposed to the general public and the conflict between pro-Palestinian supporters and pro-Israeli supporters. My question is how much the media affects real-life decisions like the embargo on Israel or the lawsuit by South Africa, and will it have more major roles in future conflicts?
First of all, great question. Matthew will be good to answer.
Tough question.
Yeah.
I'll say this to everyone, so we're not just looking backwards. You want to? We can prep the next person also to answer it.
Okay.
But I'll say this to everyone. I think one thing we've learned during this war is that the media doesn't actually portray what people really think.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd start with that. I'd say that the media represents a small percentage of audiences, and it represents the most sensationalist and the most extreme opinions that people hold in many of the cases. This is, by the way, left and right.
Yeah, you don't put on the news, today the people of Israel went to get eggs and milk, which is what the majority of the people did, but it's not newsworthy.
Yeah. So news by its nature focuses on extreme events. You never hear anyone say, once again, today was a normal day, all is good, I'll see you tomorrow.
Unless you're like in Canada and all they talk about is the weather.
Yeah, so there's this joke in like...
Not anymore.
but again, weather is something that happens all the time, and they make it into something dramatic. I'd say around the world, opinions are much more diversified than the media makes them out to be. Around the world, the level of hatred towards Israel is both better and worse than the media makes it out to be.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that statement. There's a new poll that came out by, what are they called? The Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. The ADL in the US that surveyed, I want to say 60,000 people, something like that. Anyways, tens of thousands of people in over 100 countries. Half the world's population holds anti-Semitic opinions. You know that? But the other half doesn't. So
I look at the glass half full.
No, it's two sides. There's people that have never met a Jew. By the way, in Asia, for instance, a large percentage of the population holds anti-Semitic opinions, not because they hate Jews, because they believe things that are said about Jews. Jews control the economy. Jews control the weather. Jews control the film industry. Jews have all the money in the world. And then they don't say, let's kill the Jews because of that. They say, we want to be like the Jews. Let's learn from the Jews. So you can be both anti-Semitic and
definitely
and Jewish loving at the same time.
Did we answer your question, or you had some? Because you had like a few topics.
I'll take it. The next question is, how should the world react if Trump's plan does come to fruition and the Palestinians will transfer to other countries, especially since we saw globally huge protests and jihadist activities?
Well, first of all, the world is reacting already just to this statement, calling Trump and Israel and this plan a genocidal plan and something that is unethical. And the fact that the world is, against something, and I think it's something for life. The fact that people are against, or the majority are against a new idea is normal. I think this is how things go. Usually there is a new idea, people are automatically against it, afraid of change, shocked. But if you are strong enough, then people think, okay, this might be good. Maybe we shouldn't fight this, we have other issues. And the fact is that if the Palestinian people will move some of them, and then you can create a positive vibe or a media about it, then you can start changing the opinions of the world. And if the war, because of it, will stop in Israel, then people will see it's better. But on the spiritual side of all of this, this is a spiritual war as well as just a physical war. People will continue to hate Israel because it's happened since the establishment of this country and for thousands of years. So they will just find a different thing to blame us on. But hopefully not the Palestinians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mishu? Stop. בוא תבוא פה.
Right, so earlier you talked about economic incentives that the US can give to other Arab countries. My question is not just about these economic incentives, it's in general about the US's interests in this area, in this conflict. How far do you think the US is willing to go? How far do you think the US needs to go, especially when they have other problems globally in Ukraine, in the South China Sea?
So I think the answer is
First of all, I like the accent very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very, very un-Israeli accent. And anyway, I'll say this. Much of the solutions to geopolitical problems have to do with the perception of power, not just the use of power. I think that's the way to look at this. The biggest power move or power play is making a threat and having people believe you without you having to act out on it.
I have an example of that, for real life. Listen, okay? So who do you put as a doorman in front of clubs in Israel or everywhere in the world? You put the biggest guy, okay? And how many times this guy ever fought? Maybe zero, maybe 1, 2, because who wants to take on this huge guy? He's scary. If you put like a skinny guy in the door, most likely he will fight all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what it is in life.
I don't go to clubs anymore, I should say. But anyway, but to your point, the U.S. is playing a global game. It isn't just about Israel. It isn't about just Gaza. It isn't about China. They're doing several things that are very, very wise when it comes to negotiating internationally. One of them is that they're unpredictable. People want to know what they're going to do, and they want to know how far they can push before the other side retaliates.
Exactly.
Trump administration is completely unexpected in the way it responds to things, and thinks on a regular and daily basis outside of the box completely. That destabilizes whatever decision-making process you do. Because if there's an expression in Hebrew and in Arabic too, is Baal Habayit ishtagea.
The landlord is crazy.
The owner of the house has lost his mind, which means there's no one to talk to reasonably. And when you can't negotiate with him, you take a defensive posture and you don't take
and you don't make any crazy moves.
Exactly. So the Chinese are looking, they're saying, wait a minute. He's firing in all cylinders.
Yeah.
He's threatening the Mexicans, the Canadians. He's cutting funding to the EU. He's sending weapons in a way that he hasn't before. He's sending ships with soldiers to the Middle East. He's doing everything that he can.
He's taxing imports.
Yeah. And it said, well, if he's willing to do that and he's never backed down or been called out on a bluff without following through on it, then why wouldn't he do that again here? And so China's looking at this and saying, I guess they mean business. Iran's looking at this and saying, I guess they mean business. Hamas are looking at this and saying, whatever you say, we're doing
we
at this point.
We released.
Yeah, but I don't just mean in the from the enemies or rather foreign interest perspective. I mean in the U.S.
What
perspective.
is the U.S. interest?
No, I mean like.
How much money do they have, and why should they spend it here? You mean?
Yes. Also, I want you to talk a bit about how the U.S. won't go overstrained, because there's a lot of problems right now that the U.S. is dealing with. As you said, Mexico, Canada. Of course, Gaza, of course, they're dealing in Ukraine, in the Philippines, Taiwan, all these problems. Don't you think that the U.S. is going to be a little bit
overstretched?
Yeah, but the same rule applies here too.
Yeah.
Where one of the key pieces in global economies is trust in the system. Money is trust in a symbol.
Yeah.
Stock markets are trust in a symbol. The U.S. dollar is trust in a symbol that is backed by nothing. There are no assets or gold that backs it. It's all based, not all, most of it is based on perception of power, influence, and benefit to be gained. So if the U.S. projects itself as, we're the only person in the world you can trade with, we're the only one that can set the tariffs, we are the person to be at the table when it comes to renegotiating trade agreements, then it elevates our financial ability. Yeah. And again, they've done their homework on this. They're setting tariffs to protect U.S. manufacturing. That bolsters U.S. economy. It creates new jobs. The Trump administration, by the way, I only started figuring this out when we were visiting the U.S. last month or whenever it was, when I heard it from Americans on how many smart moves they did in incentivizing businesses. They understand how the economy works. Let's be truthful here. So if they're perceived as, we're the ones we want to sell oil to, we want to trade with you, we want you to buy our goods, that's good for the U.S. and it's good for the U.S. population. It all goes together.
So to sum up, you're basically saying that the projection of power that the U.S. makes by solving these issues, especially right here in Gaza, can basically help solve all the other problems that the U.S. is facing.
Not all, but many.
Most, yeah.
But it turns down the intensity of many of the problems.
Yeah.
Because China plans 50 years into the future. They really do.
Yeah.
They look at the situation and they say,
okay, let's wait 4 years, do nothing now.
Exactly. Look, hey guys, open up the Gantt charts. We're pushing everything back 4 more years.
Yeah, after Trump is out.
We're not touching any of this till Trump's out of office.
Yeah.
We're not going to dare do this. And they'll say something. He's crazy. He's unpredictable. He's all that.
Yeah.
For the U.S., that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
What does that guarantee? That it guarantees the U.S. continues to get chips and processors from Taiwan, from what are they called? TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductors. They keep controlling that market. They keep controlling the AI market. They do all these things that keep their edge on the market and keeps other people at bay. That's good for them. By extension, it's good for Israel.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions.
We'll bring you back to
Yeah, and great school. Thanks for teaching the children how to speak with a British accent.
That, by the way, he's not actually from the UK. He just watched Peppa Pig.
That's real. None of my parents.
He just said
Oh, really?
That's real.
You just watched Peppa Pig.
So hi, thank you for
your name?
having us, Ronnie.
Nice to meet you.
I wanted to ask, considering that basically everything's political, and obviously you have, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu on the screen behind you, how plausible do you think this solution is? Because, I mean, consider everything is political, and for example, Trump leaned quite heavily on the Muslim-Arab vote in this re-election. My first thought was, it could fall through any moment. If there's quite a big resistance inside the U.S. from Trump's voters, it can fall through like this. So you talked a lot about what is going to happen in Gaza once this solution actually comes true, but we have to face the period before it, which is all the talks and communication, and how is it going to not fall through in the talks and the...
Which part of it? Like the current
The solution, just the solution. It's like you said, it's like something that nobody thought about. It was considered crazy, right wing, and all these things. So when it comes from Trump's side, it's like how do we get to the situation where it's not that fragile when it comes to political agenda?
Well, I think first of all, you asked about the support internally in the United States. Okay, so Trump rose to power on the fact that he's promising a better economy, a better future for the Americans, and this is something that day-to-day people think about first. Before they think about the Palestinians in Gaza, about the problems in the world, in the Middle East, they think, what car am I driving, that I can bring food to my family, that I have a good job, okay? So internally, Trump is making moves that help the American economy, okay? So I think that his base and his core voters are focused on that, okay? So as long as he's bringing money into the table and he knows how to do that, then he has the political base to keep doing what he wants in the world. And if he's backing his initiatives on economical structures, which is what he's trying to do here in the Gaza Strip, then they have a chance of succeeding. Because this is something that Israel has been doing a lot by, employing and granting work to Palestinians to come and work in Israel, and then creating economic dependency mutually. And this is like the path for a future. And that's how Trump rose. He thinks that everything has a price on it. He thinks that the only, good deal is a deal that both sides will benefit and both sides will lose if it fails. So this is how he operates. And I think that if he forms, and I think he has a really good plan involving Arab countries in this region, involving, the better life for the Palestinians, that this thing has a chance of not collapsing. And in general, every time you do something different in life, you're going to have resistance in the beginning. If it's like wearing a colorful shirt like Tomer wears to school, you are going to have people saying, what are you wearing today? But if you do it, every day, and you're cool, people will start to wearing the same shirt. So it's okay to make, radical changes, just you need to be strong and confident to keep doing it.
Yeah, I think what I just meant, I didn't say it in a good way, but I just meant that there really was a big population of Arab Muslims inside the U.S. who voted for Trump, and he kind of leaned on that, and he went to, I don't know if that considers rallies, but he, he listened to the Arab and Muslim communities inside the U.S. and kind of...
And I'll say that if we have this conversation honestly, the right thing to do for the people of Gaza is anything that gets Hamas out. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's like the only way they can have a better future is if we do anything in our power to remove Hamas. And if it takes doing a copy-paste to the population for a season to get them out of there, to rebuild the place, to destroy the terrorist infrastructure, and to kill Hamas, not just as a terrorist organization, financially, as a governing power of those people, and as a tool of ideology implementation. The only way to do that is to remove them. And I think long term, when you look at that, killing people is not going to work. Violence against them is not going to work. Threats against them don't work. They don't care about their population. The only way to do this...
Sending aid didn't work.
Yeah, they just use it all for the same purpose. So the only way to do this is do something extreme. And if you're having an honest conversation about how do we rebuild a better life for the Palestinians in the Judean Samaria, in the Gaza Strip, in the refugee camps outside of the country, it's like you don't let their government rule them because they don't know how to do it. They're a villainous and evil government. So I think it boils down to the same conversation.
Yeah, plus
if you're honest.
Yeah, which is a problem.
Which is tricky.
Yeah.
The tricky part. If you're automatically anti-Semitic, then it's a harder conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the Muslim population in the United States will be happy that Israel and the United States will have more cooperation in this region to have some economic benefits with Arab nations instead of just terrorism and wars.
Okay, thank you.
Someone who does not have a British accent. Okay, good.
So my question is, do you think that we'll receive backlash from the UN? And if so, like, how hard would it be to face?
Wow.
Let me ask you.
Can it be harder than what we already received?
Okay,
let's start with
let's
that.
play a hypothetical game.
Yeah.
Could our relationship with the U.S. and the UN bias against Israel be any worse than it possibly is? And let's
UN and EU.
UN and UN and what did I say? US?
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant EU. Sorry, UN and EU. They are already automatically anti-Semitic. They're already automatically anti-Zionist. They already are a majority of non-democratic states that always vote against Israel on every single topic and can never vote and condemn anything else and any other world violence unless it's tied into Israel. So as it is, it's
already super bad.
The fix for them is bulldozing the building and rebuilding it from scratch. That's the fix for UN bias against Israel. Is defunding most of their organizations, firing everyone, and bringing back new people that aren't. Think about this. Khan, the head of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, he is a public supporter of terrorism and a public anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
He's a man who's dedicated his life and career
against
Israel and against the Jewish people. How worse could it be than that? It can't possibly be worse. So it's like you had the UN has a Human Rights Council, the HRC. The HRC is chaired by countries that systematically mutilate, rape, and kidnap their population. And what do they spend most of their time doing?
Accusing Israel.
Condemning Israel.
Yeah.
So how could it possibly be worse? So when Trump says we need to defund the UN, it's not out of spite. It's because they're rotten and corrupt. And they've been so for decades. They need to be defunded and rebuilt with a new agenda that is at least somewhat honest.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
זהו? אנחנו סיימנו, תומר, are we done?
יש לנו עוד אחד.
One more.
One more question. One more. Okay.
No, you probably need to tell them to subscribe and
No, Mati wants to tell them.
Considering your plan, what are you going to do with the hostages?
My plan?
Yes. No, with the plan itself, yes.
So the hostages are a key issue. And according to Trump and Netanyahu, all of this plan of relocating the population of Gaza is part of the third plan, or basically the day after the ceasefire is completed between Israel and Hamas. So Trump also threatened Hamas that if all the hostages will not be released, more violence is going to be implemented against them. So the hostage release deal should keep going. If not, the IDF and the United States are there to imply additional, pressure and military force against Hamas to make sure that the hostages come home.
Yes,
hopefully, we really pray and hope that they come home soon, all of them.
Yes, it's very important.
Oh, for sure.
It's one of the key questions in this whole thing, in my opinion.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. It would have been a different story if we didn't have...
it's not just that. Our greatest power, which is that we cherish life and we value humanity and we care deeply about every person that's lost to our society,
is our greatest weakness.
It's also our greatest weakness because our enemies use it against us. It goes together.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
That's it.
Okay. Well, I think it's
So thank you so much, guys, for joining us today for Ma'ale Adumim. Whoever is your English teacher, you should give him a raise because all the questions were amazing. You know, and you guys have an awesome future in international diplomacy. And
better English than us.
Yeah, than me for sure. But guys, thank you for joining us. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, for the Middle East, for your leaders all over the world. And subscribe, like, and share. Join us again next week for another TBN Israel, the podcast. Thank you, Mati.
Thank you, Yair.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at TBN.